In 1927, a rum runner off the Jersey Shore cut his engine with a Coast Guard cutter bearing down. 80 cases of whiskey in the hold, hardtack in his coat pocket. He did not move. Number 22 has no name. Number 11 cost 4 cents. Number 1 was not a meal, it was a ritual. These men did not eat well. They ate smart. Hit subscribe. Let us count down 25 strange meals Prohibition rum runners ate while outrunning the Coast Guard. Number 25. Hardtack and condensed milk. Hardtack had been Navy standard since the Civil War. Rum runners carried it because nothing else survived 3 weeks in a wet hold without spoiling. You broke a piece off, poured condensed milk over the top, and that was breakfast. Not a good breakfast, an adequate one. At sea, those are not the same thing. Number 24. Raw onion on pilot bread. Pilot bread was the cracker the American coastline ran on. Hard, dry, indestructible. A raw onion lasted weeks with no refrigeration. You sliced it thick, laid it flat on the cracker, and ate it standing in the dark. The bite of raw onion gave your mouth something that felt like a real meal. It was not. Number 23. Cold salt pork from the brine bucket. Salt pork cost 5 cents a pound in 1920 and needed no cooking if the brine had done its work. Cut a strip from the bucket, lay it flat on hardtack, eat without slowing the boat. Cold fat, cold bread, cold water. That was dinner, if dinner is what you called it. Number 22. Maine sardines, eaten with 2 fingers. Maine had been canning sardines since 1875. The tins were small, flat, and quiet to open if you knew what you were doing. You pulled each fish out, ate it whole, and drank the oil when they were gone. No tools, no fire, no smell that carried across dark water to a cutter running without lights. Number 21. Peanut butter and molasses on pilot bread. By 1922, peanut butter sat on shelves from Maine to Florida. Molasses was cheaper than sugar and twice as dense. You spread both on pilot bread, wrapped it in cloth, and it held through a 6-hour run without going soft. Men who lived on this said it kept them steady when nothing else on the boat would. Number 20. Cold canned corned beef hash. Libby's had been selling corned beef hash to American families for years before Prohibition started. The rum runners did not heat it. There was no stove. You punched the lid open, tilted the can back, and ate what came out. Cold, clumped, salty. The man running rum from Bimini to Miami had no kitchen. He had a tin opener and 48 hours of open water. Before we continue, in January 1920, the Volstead Act made selling alcohol in the United States a federal crime. By 1924, new legislation gave the Coast Guard authority to stop any vessel on the open ocean not just within the original 3-mile limit. The Coast Guard expanded from roughly 4,000 men to 12,000, all of them hunting rum runners along a coastline stretching from Maine to Miami. What nobody in Washington had planned for was this. Those men still had to eat. And because they could not cook, could not show a light, and could not stop for longer than it took to load a cargo hold, they built a way of eating that nobody in power had thought to account for. Number 19. Dried salt cod with vinegar on hardtack. Salt cod had been the backbone of New England trade for centuries. No cooking required. You broke a strip, pressed it flat on hardtack, and shook vinegar over the top. The vinegar cut the salt. The cod gave you something to chew. On a 30-hour crossing with nothing but water ahead, something to chew was everything. Number 18. Cold cornmeal mixed with water. This is not a meal anyone would choose. It is the meal you make when the boat is running low and the coast is still 12 hours out. Cornmeal in cold water, stirred by hand in the dark. No heat, no salt, no flavor worth naming. What it gave you was weight in your stomach and enough strength to hold the wheel steady until sunrise. Number 17. Hard-boiled eggs wrapped in wet burlap. Before every run, a man boiled a half-dozen eggs and wrapped them in wet burlap. They held without refrigeration for 2 days. You peeled one in the dark, ate it in 3 bites, and moved on. No shell left on deck, no noise. The wet cloth was the only thing on the boat that was still warm by morning. Number 16. Navy bean paste on pilot bread. Navy beans had been the standard military ration in the United States since the Civil War. Cheap, dense, and lasting. You boiled them down before the trip, pressed them into paste, and sealed the jar. Spread on pilot bread on the third night of a run, it was the closest thing to a real meal a rum runner ate without going ashore. Number 15. Canned tomatoes poured over stale bread. Del Monte had been putting tomatoes in tins since 1895. You opened the can, poured it over whatever bread was left, and waited 5 minutes while the bread soaked up everything. Modern food writers call it panzanella and charge $14 a bowl. The men eating it between Long Island and Connecticut in the dark never heard that word. They called it getting through the night. Number 14. Molasses poured straight on hardtack. Molasses was the cheapest sweetener in the American market through the entire decade of the 1920s. You poured it over hardtack and ate it cold. The sugar hit fast and lasted longer than almost anything else that came out of a jar. Men on night watch kept molasses close because it kept their eyes open when nothing else would. It was not sweet the way dessert is sweet. It was sweet the way making it to shore is sweet. Number 13. Dried apple rings and black coffee. Dried apples had been standard soldier rations since the Civil War. Light, compact, and stable for months without spoiling. You chewed them slowly, one ring at a time, and washed each one down with whatever black coffee was still lukewarm in the tin. The combination kept men alert on long night crossings when there was nothing to do but listen for the sound of a Coast Guard engine coming through the fog. Number 12. Cold fatback and cornmeal patty. Fatback was the cheapest cut of pork in the American South, and rum runners working the Gulf Coast lived on it. You pressed the mixture into patties before the trip and wrapped them in oilcloth. By the time hunger came, they were cold and solid. You broke off a piece and chewed until it was gone. Not designed for pleasure, designed to be eaten one-handed, in the dark, without slowing down. Number 11. Potted meat on pilot bread. Potted meat had spread across the American market after World War I, when soldiers came home comfortable with food from tins and factories met that demand. Small cans. Cheap. No refrigeration required. You spread the contents on pilot bread and ate without stopping. The taste was salt and fat and nothing else. At 2 in the morning on the open Atlantic, salt and fat and nothing else was exactly enough. Number 10. Pickled onions straight from the jar. The Northeast had been pickling onions for generations. Vinegar and brine kept them stable for months without cold storage. Rum runners along the Atlantic seaboard stowed jars of them in the hold right beside the whiskey cases. You pulled the lid off, fished one out with 2 fingers, and bit in. The sharp brine cut through the salt and the cold and the exhaustion all at once. It woke you up faster than coffee. The operational accounts of Prohibition-era rum running rarely documented what crews ate during a crossing. Federal records focused on seizures, patrol hours, and arrest totals, not on the logistics of keeping men functional while being pursued at sea. These men operated modified speedboats capable of reaching close to 40 knots. The Coast Guard cutters chasing them were slower, heavier, and built for patrol rather than pursuit. The rum runners held one measurable edge: speed. Speed requires a man who is sharp, not full, not sluggish, not weighted down by a heavy meal sitting in his gut. The food they ate was not the product of poverty, it was the product of operational precision. Every piece of hardtack, every tin of sardines, every jar of pickled onion existed on that boat because it kept a man light, clear, and awake during the hours when everything depended on how fast he could move. They were not eating poorly. They were eating exactly right. Number 9. Rum-soaked hardtack. They were running it. Every case in the hold was worth more than a week's wages. Almost no one drank on a run. Drinking was the same as giving up. But some men pressed a corner of hardtack against the lip of an open bottle for 3 seconds. Just enough to taste what they were risking everything to deliver. That was all. That was the whole of it. Number 8. Salt pork and cold bean stew at the safe house. Rum runners had safe houses tucked into coves and inlets all along the eastern coast. They pulled in before dawn and ate salt pork and bean stew, heated over a wood fire with the windows covered. One real meal per run. Some men said it was the best they ever had. Not because of the food, because of who was still at the table to eat it. Number 7. Dried prunes on the night watch. The man on watch could not leave the wheel, could not make noise. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a handful of dried prunes, and ate them one at a time over the course of an hour, letting the sugar work slowly and quietly through him. This was not snacking. This was staying awake long enough to finish the crossing. Number 6. Canned peaches eaten as a meal. You did not save the canned peaches for dessert. There was no dessert, there was hunger, and then there was the can opener. You drank the syrup first because it was the only thing on the boat that was cold and sweet. Then you ate the slices one at a time with your fingers, down to the last drop of juice, and you did not feel guilty about wanting more. Number 5. Cornmeal and seawater. When fresh water ran low and food ran lower, some men mixed cornmeal with seawater and pressed it into a flat cake by hand. It did not taste like food. It tasted like necessity. Sailors had been doing this for generations before Prohibition started. It was old knowledge, passed down through men who could not afford to let it go. Number 4. The pocket meal. When the Coast Guard was close, when the searchlight swept the water and every man lay flat on a dead deck, no one went below. Whatever was in the coat pocket was dinner. A strip of hardtack, 2 dried prunes, half a cracker, sometimes nothing at all. You held whatever it was in your closed fist and waited until the light moved on. Number 3. Hardtack dissolved in silence. There are accounts in the Coast Guard patrol records of rum runners who lay flat on their boats for 40 minutes or more while a cutter swept the water around them with its searchlight. They did not move. A man who needed to eat reached into his coat, placed a piece of hardtack on his tongue, and let it dissolve slowly. No chewing. The sound of chewing carries across flat water in the dark farther than most people know. He lay there and waited. The light moved on. He was still. Number 2. The meal before the run. Before a hard crossing, the crew ate together at the safe house. Bean stew, old bread, black coffee. Nobody talked much. The food was not the point. The table was the point. Men who might not make it back by morning sat together in a lit room and ate slowly, without rushing. The stew was not good. No one said it was. It did not need to be good. It needed to be shared, and it was. Number 1. The meal after. The boat came in before first light. The cargo was offloaded. No one spoke. Someone opened a tin of sardines. Someone found the last of the pilot bread from the beginning of the trip, stale now, and broke it into pieces. Cold coffee in a tin. They did not toast. They did not celebrate. They just ate. On a dock, in the dark, in a country that had told them what they were doing was wrong. They ate because they had made it through another night. That was enough. That was always enough. When Prohibition ended on December 5th, 1933, the 21st Amendment repealed the law that had put these men on the water. Most of them went back to ordinary lives. Most never spoke about it. What they left behind was not a recipe book or a named food tradition. What they left behind was a way of eating that said something simple. I am still here. I made it through. The rum runners did not eat well. They ate to survive a law, a government, and an open sea that wanted them gone. What they put in their mouths on those boats was not the food of poor men. It was the food of men who knew exactly what they needed to keep moving when everything around them was trying to make them stop. The meals were not poverty. They were proof. Tell me in the comments, did your grandfather run rum? Or did he just know how to eat like he might not get another chance?